Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about my TBR for the 2024 Our Fantasy Bingo Challenge. This is a challenge run by the fantasy subreddit every year. I think it's been going for about 10 years now, which is really cool. I participated last year though, and I did not succeed at completing the bingo board. I did read about a fifth, I think, of the books that I originally had planned. So I didn't do terrible, but just life got in the way and I didn't read as much as I had hoped. However, I am about to graduate from my master's program and I'm going to have more free time, so I really wanted to try participating again this year. I did actually forget about the challenge, and then I remembered it because Becca in the Books just posted her TBR for this, and I'm glad that I saw that and remembered because I really wanted to participate again this year, and I'm going to link her TBR down in the description so you can go check it out and see what she's going to be reading for these prompts, but I'm glad that I saw it and remembered to put together my own TBR. So if you're unfamiliar with this challenge, there's a bingo board of prompts, and there's just a handful of rules. The first one being that you can only have one prompt per book. You can't double up. You also can only have one reread. You can only have one prompt per author. You can't read like multiple books from the same author for the prompts. And then a book that is less than 50% complete by April 1st, which is the start date, can count towards the challenge if you finish it after April 1st, as long as it was less than 50% read prior to the start of the challenge. So I think that's all the rules. I have also set an extra challenge for myself, which is that I am only choosing books off of my physical shelf. There were a couple of these that were really hard to find something for, but I have managed it. I found a physical book for every single prompt, and I'm really excited. I tried to pick a blend of things that I'm really anticipating and have been wanting to pick up, and some things that I've been trying to prioritize or having trouble prioritizing, things that have maybe been sitting on my shelves for a while, in the hopes that I might be able to use this as an opportunity to prioritize them. So that was kind of my thinking behind the books that I've picked, and I think we'll just go through row by row. So the first row begins with First in a Series, and I've chosen Gideon the Ninth for this one because I started it several years ago. I read like 100 pages and then had to turn it back into the library. Bought my own copy. I now own the first 3 books in the series, and I haven't read the first one. So I really need to get a start on this series, and I would like to be able to be caught up by whenever Electo comes out. I know that that's been pushed back a number of times, but I would like to go ahead and get caught up on the series, so this was a pretty easy first pick. The second prompt is a alliterative title, so it needed to have at least 2 words in the title that have the same first letter, and I've chosen Living Dead in Dallas by Charlaine Harris, which is the second book in the Sookie Stackhouse series. This is a book I'm reading for the Cursed Books Club that my friends and I have, and it's, I think, yeah, so it's the second book in the series. It's where I'm at in the series. I've only read the first one, and I keep meaning to pick it up, so I thought this would be a good chance to kind of like push myself to get to it, because I actually do own the entire series on this one. I found them secondhand, and my friends have been like waiting for me to actually pick this one up, so I need to get to it now. Then the third prompt is Under the Surface, a book set either underwater or underground, and I've chosen, if I can get a hold of it, Mazes of Power by Juliette Wade, which I've seen described as a sociological sci-fi, which has piqued my interest, but this is set in an underground city, one of several that are a part of this kingdom. I think it's the capital city, and in this world, the nobility have become very inbred and as a result are susceptible to disease, and there's this constant race to find a new heir to take the throne. And so in this particular instance, the ruler has just died, and there's these 2 brothers who are now vying for the throne. I think there's going to be some other political aspects as well, but this sounds super interesting. I think it's the beginning of a trilogy, and it's been sitting on my shelves for quite a while. The next prompt is criminals, and the main character needed to be a criminal of some kind. I was kind of laughing because one of the examples they gave of a crime is mail fraud, so now I'm just thinking about like sci-fi or fantasy mail fraud, and I really want to know what that would look like. But for the book I've chosen, it's a thief character, and I'm going to be reading A Shadow All of Light by Fred Chappell. This is actually a local to me author, which is pretty cool, but this is about this guy named, I think, Falco, who goes to the city to become a shadow thief. And I think it's kind of like an episodic adventure series. It's an episodic adventure book. The very last prompt on this row is Dreams, and for this I have chosen The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin, which features dream and nightmare magic. This is a book that's been sitting on my shelves for quite a while, and I've been meaning to try something from N.K. Jemisin for a while as well. I know her books are just like beloved, and I just really want to give her writing a try because I know that people say that like her writing is really intense and like breaks your brain in an interesting way. So I'm really excited to try this one, and I really don't know what to expect. Row number 2 starts with entitled animals, so it needed to be a book with an animal in the title, and I've got Rabbits by Terry Miles, which is I think based on a podcast, but it's about an alternate reality game that's running periodically. I think like there's been a few different rounds of it, and basically the entire world is involved, but somebody who is going to be participating in the next round of Rabbits is approached and told that they need to prevent the game from starting because otherwise the entire world will be at stake. However, the person that warns them suddenly disappears, the game begins, and then the main character is stuck trying to figure out what the heck is going on and save the world in the meantime. The next prompt is bards, so this needed to feature a bard, a storyteller, a poet, or something along those lines, and I think hard mode was it. There's hard mode versions of every prompt, by the way. I'm just not doing hard mode for most of them. But hard mode for this was the character is actually called a bard, and so I have one book that has a bard in it, and it's A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This is another one that's just been kind of sitting on my shelves. I've heard some really good things about the writing. I haven't heard as many good things about the story, so I'm not sure what I'm going to make of this one, but it has, again, been sitting on my shelves for a while. It's a really beautiful book, and I want to at least give it a try before I consider unhauling it. The third prompt on this row is prologues and epilogues, so I needed to have a prologue or an epilogue. I think the hard mode for this was it has both. I don't know if this has both, I just saw a prologue in it and picked it, but I have The Eternophiles by Leanna Renee Heber. I know very little about this book because I found it in my library's book sale, and that's it. I read the premise, it sounded kind of interesting. There's something about a formula for immortality that people are hunting for, and that's pretty much all that I know. I think it's also the beginning of a series, or at least a duology, and I don't know what to expect from this one at all, but I think it could be really interesting. Next up is self-published or indie publisher, and I've chosen The Hungry Earth by Nicholas Kaufman, which has been on so many TBRs for me at this point. I have really struggled to get to this one because I'm a little concerned that the horror elements of this might actually really freak me out. And so I've been struggling to pick this one up, even though Nicholas Kaufman is one of my favorite authors. I'm really hoping this is going to be the push that I need to actually pick it up. And then the last one on this row is Romantasy, a book that features romance as a main plot. I have A Restless Truth by Freya Marsk, which is a fantasy romance set in the Edwardian era, following Maud and Violet. I'm very excited about this one. I have started it. I'm not very far in, just a few chapters, but I love Maud. She's in the first book in the series. This is the second book in the Last Binding trilogy, and I love her so much, and I'm so excited to see her get her romance. So, also, it's a murder mystery on a ship, which is fun. On to the third row, and this one starts with Dark Academia. I've chosen Babel just because I'm having trouble prioritizing it because it's chunky and intimidating, and I feel like this one just really, I need that extra push to actually pick it up. The next prompt is multi-POV, and I've chosen Before They Are Hanged, which is the second book in the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie. I really loved the first book in this series. I chose this one because I know it was multi-POV and because I'm really excited to get to it. The third prompt is published in 2024, and this one just came out a couple of weeks ago. So this is The Last Blood Carver by Vanessa Lee, about this character who is a blood carver, meaning she can alter human anatomy with just a touch, and she gets pulled into a murder investigation when she is captured and sold to a wealthy family who want her to heal the last witness to the patriarch's death. Next up is a character with a disability, and I've chosen Iron Widow by Siren J. Zhao. This one has a character who I think experienced foot binding as a child and now has limited mobility. I have heard pretty good things about this, so I'm excited to pick it up, and I think the sequel is about to come out, later this month. Last one on this row is published in the 90s, and I've chosen City of Bones by Martha Wells. This is a more recent printing, but I did double check in the front. The original publication was in 1995, so I'm going to count it because it's the only thing I could find on my shelves that was published in the 90s. I genuinely could not find anything else, but I am very excited to read this anyway because I love Martha Wells' writing, and this is just extra incentive for me to get to it. On to row 4, and this one starts with Orcs, Trolls, and Goblins. Oh my. So I needed to have a main character or heavily feature Orcs, Trolls, or Goblins, and I have chosen Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. It was the first book that came to mind because I know the main character is an orc, and I don't think I have any other books with orcs in them, or trolls, or goblins as main characters. Then we've got Space Opera, and I've chosen Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I have quite a few books by this author on my shelf, and I haven't read a single one, so I'm really intrigued to see what I make of his writing, because I am excited for all of his books that I have on my shelf. But I decided to start with this one because this is another case where I got some of the books secondhand, so I have more than one book in the series, and so I feel like I ought to make a start on it and kind of start making progress there. I've just realized I haven't necessarily been telling you what all of these books are about, but for some of them it's because I genuinely don't remember off the top of my head. I just know they're on my shelves because I was excited to read them. The next prompt is Author of Color, and I've chosen Lone Women by Victor Laval. I've read 2 books from him previously. Both were short. One was a novella, one was a graphic novel. I really loved both of them, and I'm curious to see what his writing is like in a longer format. I've also heard just like fantastic reviews of this book in particular, but this is following a woman named Adelaide who flees to Montana after some sort of tragic event. She has some sort of chest with her that contains something spooky or ominous or sinister or something like that, and that's pretty much all that I know about this. But again, I just really liked Victor Laval's writing the last 2 times I read from him, and I've heard so many good things about this book that I'm pretty sure I'm going to love it. Next up is Survival. This was a book that had to feature survival in some way, and that has to be, I think, a main piece of the plot. So I've chosen The Blighted Stars by Megan E. O'Keefe, and this is one where I've just been chomping at the bit to pick this up. I keep pulling it off my shelves and then putting it back because I don't have time to read it right now because I'm finishing final projects, but I am probably going to read this one first out of all of these because I am so excited for it. This is about a rebel and the heir to a galactic empire who end up stranded on a dead planet together and have to try and survive. I think there's some politics, and there's also obviously surviving on this planet, and I think there's also a romance in it, so I'm really excited for this one. And then the final prompt on this row is Judge a book by its cover. Pick a book with a cover you love. And I've chosen A Sundial by Catriona Ward. I haven't read anything from this author yet, but I just love the cover of this. I love the colors they've chosen for it. I think it's really striking, and I remember basically nothing about the plot. The 5th and final row begins with Set in a Small Town, and I have these out of order, I've just realized, but it's fine, because the one I need is on top. So this is The Prince of Mist by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This one is about this couple who are, I think, fleeing the Spanish Civil War. They moved from the city to a small coastal town and end up encountering the ghost of the previous owner's son of the villa that they're living in, but also a sinister entity known as the Prince of Mist. And that's all I know. Then we've got 5 short stories. I think the hard mode for this was read an entire anthology, but I've chosen Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Stories by Robert Louis Stevenson. Don't know why that was so hard to say. I've never read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, so I want to read that. And then this collection also contains like 6 or 7 other short stories by the same author. Then we've got Eldritch Creatures, and I've chosen Leech by Hiron Ennis. This is another one I've started, but I think I was like a third of the way through. I was listening to this on audio, but it's been a very long time since I picked it up now. So it's another one I'm probably going to have to reread the first part to continue on. But this one is following this kind of like eldritch physician who has replaced all of the world's doctors, but a body of theirs has now gone missing and then turns up dead, or rather I think just turns up dead maybe, and another body is sent to try and figure out what is going on in the like super far north of this kind of dystopian kind of world. A little bit steampunk, a little bit dystopian, a little bit gothic, and I was really enjoying it. Penultimate prompt is Reference Materials, a book that contains some sort of materials besides the actual text. This could be a map, a glossary, a dramatis personae. This book, The Hexologist, has multiple of those. It has a dramatis personae at the beginning, and then it has like a bunch of other, like I think there's a glossary, but there's other like funny texts at the back too. There's, let's see if I can get back to it. There's glossary, there's excerpts from the Hexad Florilegium, an index of hexes. So there's like a bunch of additional pieces of information about the world in this one. The very little bit I remember about the plot is that it's a married couple who are hexologists, and they're approached when the king of, is it England or is it some sort of fake world? I'm not really sure. But the king of somewhere keeps trying to bake himself into a cake. And so they're called to investigate when that starts happening. The very final book and the very final prompt is a book club or read-along book. And this was to read a book that's either a current or former pick from one of the Our Fantasy book clubs, and they have really helpfully a spreadsheet with a bunch of the different books that they've read. So I've chosen The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This is another one where I've been having trouble prioritizing it, but I know this is a speculative murder mystery where somebody is like waking up in the different body of or in the body of a different person every day, but all of the people are tied to this one particular murder, and they're trying okay. And they're trying to figure out, like, the murder. And I think there's, like, a time limit or something. I don't know much beyond that, but it sounds like it could be really intriguing. So those are all of the books I'm hoping to read in the next year for our fantasy bingo. I'm really excited about this. It's a really interesting stack, I think, because it's got such a wide variety of things that I'm excited for, things that I'm a little bit trepidatious about, and I'm curious to see how much of it I manage to get through before the end of March next year. So let me know down in the comments if you're going to be participating, and if so, what book are you most excited to read for the challenge? And if you don't have anything to add, I think, is there a bingo emoji of some kind? I don't know. Put a thumbs up emoji if not, because I do that all of the time. And just let me know that you were here. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe you're subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.